listening to the Marketing Happy Hour podcast, where we discuss career and industry insights with our peers in marketing.
We're here to talk about it all, like the ups and downs of working in social media,
how to build authentic relationships in the influencer and PR space,
managing a 9-to-5 and a side hustle at the same time,
how to be productive in your life and career without losing your sanity, and more.
Ultimately, we're here to build a community with you because we're all trying to navigate the world of marketing together.
Are you ready? Grab your favorite drink and join your hosts, Cassie and Erica, for this week's episode. Marketing Happy Hour listeners, this week we are so excited to introduce you to designer and branding expert Hennessy Warner. In this episode, Hennessy chats through her unconventional career path and what initially sparked her love for branding and design, how impactful a strong brand story and visuals can truly be, her best tips for optimizing your website to avoid common mistakes that she comes across in her work with web design clients, and more. Go ahead, grab your favorite drink, and listen in with us.
Hennessy, how are you? This is a long time coming having you on the show. I'm so excited that you're here today.
I am so excited to be on. I am an avid listener. I love listening to you guys in the morning and love listening to all the guests you've had on. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Welcome. You're welcome. We are honored as well. Well, so we are recording at 9:30 in the morning, but we have to ask you, what is typically in your glass in the evenings or even in the mornings? Like, what do you enjoy sipping on?
That's an interesting question. So I usually literally drink water on the rocks, super normal. But no, if I am having a drink, I mean, we'll jump into this in the conversation, but I love an Aperol spritz or any kind of spritz. The one, I don't know if you guys are familiar or have heard of an Ugo spritz. It's an Italian drink. Oh my gosh, I love it. It's refreshing. It's light.
With Saint Germain, right? Like the elderflower.
Yes.
Liqueur.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's really good.
Very good. I love it. I had it. I had it a while ago, and the place where I was at made it so well that I was like, this is my favorite drink. So this is it.
Yeah, I just have my tea. I'm not feeling too great right now, so I have peppermint tea, and I love. You said it was pronounced Hugo Spritz. I, for some reason, thought it was Hugo because I think that's how it's spelled. But
yeah, it's fine.
However you want to say it, it's delicious. Amazing. I also love that Aperol Spritz's Negronis is my absolute go-to, and it was just Negroni week, and I didn't even have one, so I'm like really bummed about that, but that's okay. What about you, Cass?
Oh, I mean, everyone knows who has listened to the show at least once. Of course, it's an Aperol Spritz usually. Hennessy and I had a group dinner on Saturday, and we got strawberry Aperol from Rola's actually, which has some deep-rooted history for Marketing Happy Hour, but it was so good. But yeah, always Aperol. But right now, honestly, I think this is the first time ever recording Marketing Happy Hour. I have no drinks on my desk. It's crazy. So I usually
How dare you? I'm just kidding.
Wild. Who is she?
Well, let's jump in. I'm excited to meet you, Hennessy. I know you and Cassie have connected a lot over the past year, and this is my first time actually meeting you, so we'll have to do some in-person happy hours soon. But I would just love to hear, alongside our listeners, a look at your career journey so far, and why are you kind of drawn to design and branding?
Yeah, this is something, I mean, Cassie knows this firsthand. When I get asked this question, I am just like, where do I even begin? Because my journey has been full and just complete unexpected turns and countless valuable lessons. I took a very unconventional path. 10 years ago, I left the comfort of my college apartment and moved away from Philadelphia and left for Europe. I lived in Italy and Spain and several other countries over the past 10 years. So for me, my career path was very unconventional. I did not have kind of in my mind, growing up as a kid, I loved traveling, and I was going to school for international business. So in my mind, after college, I didn't really see myself in the States. And an opportunity came up my junior year, and I was just like, I'm just going to take it and kind of see where it goes. When I landed in Milan, literally, I turned on my phone and the plan that I had set up just like completely switched. So it was, yeah, it was very interesting. I was met with like a lot of challenges as far as like when you're going into a new country, language barriers, things with like your visa. You can't just work, like you can't just apply for jobs or anything. So there was a lot of like bureaucracies and things and cultural differences and stuff that I had to deal with. And I just kind of, as I was finishing school, I was looking for opportunities left and right as far as getting professional experience. I did executive assistant work. I did event planning, and I worked with the sales team of a travel company in Spain. Like I did a lot of different things to try to just gain experience, because I was dealing with the fact of so much uncertainty that I didn't know where my career was really going to go. So I wanted to really, when the time came, I wanted to be prepared. And yeah, so I did a lot of non-design, non-branding work before. But when I became a mom, I ran into the biggest issue. Obviously, my life was very, I don't want to say unstable, but I wasn't in one place for a very long time. And I ended up having to resort to creating opportunities for myself. So I went into something even more unconventional, considering that my formal education was in business. I went into creating a leather accessories brand while I was living in Italy. And so that kind of like kickstarted my whole obsession really with branding and brand creation and design and everything. So that's really where like all of that kind of started out. But in a nutshell, that's how my career kind of went or started. I mean, I feel like we need like a 2-hour episode to cover everything that that kind of happened over the past 10 years, but that's where I'm at right now.
No, yeah. And then recently you kind of pivoted between a job loss or layoff and launching your own business. Do you have any tips for being open to new career directions and being adaptable, kind of like you were talking about when you moved to the new country and you kind of had to do that?
Yeah, I think moving overseas was a master class in adaptability. Like I had to really um think fast on my toes. I had to problem solve super quickly. And I think that's the one thing that I kind of perfected in a way. So when I run into a lot of challenges, I feel like I'm like constantly thinking, okay, what's the next, what do I do next? How do I rebound from this or pivot in a different direction? So I think as far as like giving tips, I think your mindset, embracing that change is a constant kind of thing. It's not like something that just randomly happens. And we just kind of have to be prepared and figure out a way to decipher what that change is and how we can approach it in a positive way instead of like getting down on yourself kind of thing, and like dwelling on what happened and whatnot. I think curiosity is really, really big. The world is so huge and there's countless of opportunities out there, especially now online. You can learn different skills. You can do so many different things. And so just keeping your mind open and curious, I think helps you identify different opportunities and whatnot. So mindset, curiosity, and then your network. For me, my network was so huge during that transition. Even like coming into the country again, I was out of the loop on everything on this side of the globe kind of thing. So for me, finding a job after I moved back to the States, it was also knowing someone. So that's something that I feel like networking is so important. And I remember when I was in school, it was so heavily emphasized, like make sure you have a strong network, make sure you're always connecting with people. And it's like in those difficult moments is when you realize how important having a strong network is. Cassie, like you mentioned earlier, I met Cassie in December, I think, of last year, and it was a little bit before this transition. And when the transition hit, I counted on her a lot to like kind of help me or guide me in this new direction that I went on, basically. So yeah, to summarize, mindset, staying curious, and just having a really strong support system and network. So
Absolutely. No, it was incredible watching you kind of go through that and just be able to pivot so quickly. And I do think, as you said, having this experience of going to Italy all of a sudden and having to learn this new way of life, this new way of creating a business or a brand or work for yourself out there really primed you, I think, for just everything else that came after that, and especially more recently. And so, things happen for a reason. And although Italy, I think, was mostly positive for you, it did set you up for success, I think, for future challenges that arose. So
yeah, I mean, I kind of like went over a very like if you think of like the iceberg, I literally only covered the tippy top of it. A lot of times we think of like, and I see it on TikTok, I see it on Instagram, like everyone's like, oh, I want to move abroad, and like America has its problems and whatnot, but moving abroad is not a cakewalk. Like there's so many challenges that you have to overcome. And I think that it's also important to kind of realize that it's not like this eat, pray, love scenario kind of situation. Like there's a lot of challenges that come with that. But I feel like today, I feel like you said, so well equipped to handle so many different transitions, that if I would have stayed in Philadelphia and just took that conventional path, I probably wouldn't be as I don't want to say confident, because I'm still very like, what's the word? I'm still I still struggle, obviously, naturally, like we're all humans, but I feel like, yeah, everyone in summer, I think everyone has their own path. So not constantly thinking that you have to take a certain path to get where you want to go. I think that kind of summarizes like my whole career path in general, just kind of trying to find the best situation that works for you and not comparing yourself to everybody else. I know that's something I struggled with early on. And even when I came back here, I was like, everyone has these incredible resumes, and I have been kind of like bouncing around all over the place. But at the end of the day, when I moved back to the States and I got a job in marketing, in the travel industry, I realized that I was just as equipped as someone who maybe had a very conventional path or career. So I think that's like the overall lesson or moral of the story kind of thing for me.
yeah, absolutely. Well, let's shift gears a little bit. You mentioned how building your own brand, the handbag brand, primed you to be able to create brand experiences for clients. And so that's what you're doing today. So can you explain to us kind of the impact of a powerful brand story and visuals?
For me, it's literally the heartbeat of any successful business. You mentioned, I know in a different podcast, you said that your brand is kind of like a way to personify a business or give it like this personality. And I think that's so like head on, perfectly a perfect way to describe it. As far as for me, like the part that I love to deal with is the visuals and like the aesthetic and everything like that. Because if we kind of follow that same theme that you mentioned, I feel like the part that I do is making sure that your business or service or whatever has its best outfit on, right? So it looks great, it's memorable, and you have this great first impression. I think it's obviously a combination of not just visuals, but also the brand messaging. I think that's super important. And you guys have discussed this with so many other branding experts out there, but it's important to have a great first nonverbal impression, I guess. When somebody sees your business, they have to have that positive gut feeling. So at the end of the day, your brand isn't just like your logo or the color palette that you use. Obviously, all those things are super important, but at the end of the day, it's also customer service. It's how your customers feel whenever they are in front of your brand or come in contact with your business or service or whatever it is. So if you have horrible customer service, it doesn't matter how gorgeous your branding is, that's the reaction, and that's how people are going to react to your business, and they're probably not going to come back. So branding is from the people who work in the design and the creative aspect of it to the people who are in the front lines in face to face with your customers. So yeah, I think it's super important, and I feel like especially for smaller businesses, it's something that's not really taken in consideration. But if you look at some of these mega businesses, Disney, Apple, Nike, they have these incredible not just brand stories, visuals, everything that kind of just encompasses their whole business. And I think it's super important. So I personally love the visuals and creating that aspect of it. But I know that there's so many different elements involved that are super vital. So
Yeah. Well, you already touched on this a little bit, but what are some things that businesses need to think about when it comes to developing their brand? I know traditionally you think about logo, colors, and like that's it. But what else to kind of extend off of that should businesses be thinking about or considering to include in kind of their brand package or kit per se?
You probably hear this all the time: a vision statement, a mission statement, like all those things kind of are the soul of your brand. So if your company or yourself, if you're a one person team, it kind of, your core values, all those things encompass like who your business is. And if we go back to talking about your business as like a person, like what are the characteristics that make your business unique to compared to everybody else in the market, kind of thing. So when you are starting, whether you're starting a business, you're doing a rebrand, you're doing all these things, it's important to not just think about, okay, what's my logo gonna look like? What's my color palette gonna like say or reflect about what I'm doing? Like it's also the messaging, it's how it's all those different things. So mission statement, vision statement, core values. It's making sure that when you write about your business, you're not talking about yourself. You're thinking about your customer and how you are solving their problems, not necessarily boasting about how great you are in your businesses. You know what I mean? So I feel like it's a little bit of everything, and it all has to tie back together and make sense for you or the business, but it for sure has to make sense for the customer. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I loved too earlier how you mentioned it's kind of the experience as well, like the customer experience that someone has with your brand. So you think about Apple, like you said, or Disney, for example, experience you have is like part of that brand.
I had the opportunity when I worked last year at the travel company that I mentioned earlier. I was able to work. Disney was one of the company's major partner. So I had the opportunity to work directly with Disney's marketing team. And it's just amazing how, like, from everybody in the organization, how they just, one, they protect their brand. Like everything we had to create had to go through their legal team and everything, obviously, because it's a major organization. But just the way that their cast members also interacted with us and made us feel special. And it was just, I was a Disney fan, or I am a Disney fan since growing up, but being able to work with them and collaborate on different projects, it just kind of amplified that even more, because I saw that everything, that Disney excellence is just brought out in every aspect. So I thought that was really awesome to see firsthand.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, what you said about the brand being going beyond just like the team that's creating the brands like behind the scenes, and it really comes to the front, like the forefront of who's actually interacting with your customers and carrying that all the way through, I think is super, super important. And an excellent example of that is Disney. I love what they do. So I want to switch gears and talk a little bit about website design, which is something else that you specialize in. What are some of the things that you see businesses get wrong on websites that lead to some poor user experience and conversions?
Yeah. Well, again, this is another kind of skill that I that I gained throughout the years. And I absolutely love doing. I think one of the biggest would you say mistakes? Yeah, mistakes that many businesses do is they have a lot of flashy different elements on their website, but at the core, like, you don't really know what they do, what problems they solve and whatnot. So I mean, I literally was on a website the other day, and let me tell you, the designer must have been like super talented because all the different elements and animations and everything. But I'm like scrolling through it and I'm like, wait, but what do you do? Like, what? This is great. It looks beautiful. But I'm, as someone who's kind of like interested in what you say you provide, when I went to your website to get more information, I was completely lost. So, I'm very intentional when it comes to design. I have a minimalistic design style. And so for me, just naturally, I try to avoid adding too much flashiness or too much like animation, things that maybe are not necessarily important or needed on a website. Unless it depends, obviously, like what space you're in. If you are someone who's maybe in the arts or something like that, you need kind of like this super design based website, then I understand it. But like for businesses that provide a service or a product, I think that's one of the pitfalls. So like if you think about it, if you see a flashy billboard on the highway and it's all these flashing lights and all this commotion, like you drive by it and you're like, what was that even about, kind of thing. So that's the one thing I feel like a lot of businesses do. And then the other thing would be kind of talking about themselves. A lot of times we go on websites and it's like, like our business was founded in 1949 and my grandfather started the business and the business is called blah, blah, blah because of this. And then it's like, that's not the approach that you want to take on messaging. So there's a few things that whenever I work with a client and I look at their website, those are kind of the red flags that I try to pick out immediately is what are they communicating and how are they presenting their service or their business as far as like visuals, and is it branded? Is it not? Does it look like everything else that they have out there? Or the customer touch points, like, is it all cohesive? Like those are some of the things that I look out for. Another thing I would say is just letting your website sit. Like you hire a designer, you hire a developer, you make your website, and then you don't touch your website for 5 years. And it's like, no, and that's the one thing that I always recommend is going in and just making small tweaks to see where you can further improve your website. Your customer changes, your business changes, there's always changes that are going on. So you have to make sure that it's evolving, your website is evolving just like your business is. And, keeping up with like a more modern look and everything, all of that kind of gives that gut feeling that, okay, this person is somebody I can trust, or this business is something I can trust. So yeah, those, if I covered a few things on that one, but those are definitely some of the things that I see a lot of times with clients that I've worked with.
Yeah, that's super helpful. And imagine someone is kind of starting from scratch with a website. They don't really know what to include on there. You kind of mentioned you want to have like a cohesive experience. What are the elements that they want to have on their website for sure? And like, what are some tips around optimizing the user experience on your own website? Aside from like, don't make it distracting, make sure there's clear CTAs, like make sure you're not just talking about yourself.
Yeah. Well, I forget what the stat is, but I feel like it's like we have our attention spans when we visit a website are like 0.3 seconds or maybe 3 seconds, something super short. So as far as like your top fold, You want to make sure that the most important information is on that, whether, I don't know, say you're a wedding planner, make sure that the visual it makes sense to what you're doing, and make sure that your title, your subtitle, and a clear call to action is on there. Making sure that the call to action is visible, and visible as often as you can, basically. And not just visible, like putting it all over the place, but making sure that there's an accent color in your branding colors, that when someone goes to your site, they know exactly what color to look for. So right now, Cassie and I actually worked on a client's website, and our call to action button was the color orange, and nowhere else on the website was orange used, basically. So like if someone is kind of like scrolling through the website, they can immediately identify where they have to click to take action to whatever service or product they're looking for. I am a huge advocate for StoryBrand and Donald Miller, and I love his framework for building the wireframe to a website and having it have kind of like the storytelling element to it. So identifying kind of the problem that your potential client could be dealing with, and then like saying it exactly how the customer purchase journey is, kind of thing. So like if you say click here, the next step will be that, like it has to be. Sometimes we think, okay, maybe we're being too obvious in what we're putting out there, but we need to make it as clear, like crystal clear as possible, for them to kind of understand, okay, you're the person I need to solve my problem, and I want to work with you, kind of thing. So yeah, those are a few tips that I definitely recommend.
Yeah, love that. Huge fan of StoryBrand over here too, as I'm sure a lot of listeners already know just from hearing a couple episodes of the show. But Hennessy, I want to ask you a little bit more about the handbag line that you were talking about. So outside of being a branding and design expert, that is a business that you're building, and I have the honor and pleasure of collaborating with you in that project, which has been amazing. But I want to know from you specifically, how has working on diverse projects made you a better creative and career woman?
Yeah, I think creating a handbag line from the ground up was an experience that like truly stretched my creativity in all aspects. From conceptualizing a design to understanding like the material and the craftsmanship and the storytelling element of everything. So I always try, with all the experiences that I've had, even though they're all super diverse, I always try to bring it in and somehow use different elements from each experience to kind of like bring a new perspective into every project that I take on. So even though it is a handbag line and whatnot, I've been able to incorporate so much of what I've learned over the years into projects that I work in with now. As far as like working with a product-based business or something like that, if I'm working with a service-based business, it's just, I feel like it's broadened my horizons a lot more than if I stick to one thing over and over and over and over again. I kind of I guess I'm realizing that there's more ways to do different things. And that's literally how I learned how to develop and design websites, was through my experience of creating a handbag line, because I didn't have the budget when I started this to hire a developer and everything to do my own website. So I read books and I watched YouTube videos. And I mean, it's funny because back then, that was back in like 2017, the internet was very different than what it is today. Like today, content creation and educating people from what you learn is like a huge thing. Like right now, if you think about it, you can literally learn anything from the internet. And in large part, that was because of the pandemic. Like a lot of stuff got moved online, but there's so many courses out there. And that's the one thing I learned through the handbag experience, is you can literally learn anything today online. And the internet is so vast. There's so much information out there. And if we stick to only like putting the little blinders on and we only focus on what we're doing, we're missing out on a bunch of stuff. So for me, that was just an opportunity to keep learning and keep finding different ways to be creative and solve problems in different ways. I'm sure if you talk to a conventional designer or developer, I'm sure they were trained to do something one way. And if you talk to me on my work process or whatever, it's probably very different. But at the end of the day, we have similar outcomes, or you know what I mean? So I feel like it's just learning that there's different ways to do different things out there, and just having the willingness to learn, make mistakes, learn from mistakes, and just teach yourself. And if you can, reach out to someone who does have more experience maybe, and can kind of guide you and troubleshoot in different areas. So that's the one thing for me, is I'm constantly looking for new ways to do things and learn. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you one more question on the handbags, because I feel like kind of tying together your experience in branding and design with designing a handbag label, you're coming at it with this unique approach. And I think it's part of that brand experience. It's all the way from the way that you're using the made in Italy tag to kind of the emotion and the experience that you want someone to have with this brand. You know, traditionally we think about some of these famous handbag brands, and they're famous for not only their look, the logo, the feel, kind of the structure of the bags, and their timelessness, but that kind of is where it stops. There's not this like deeper experience that you want someone to have with the brand. So how have you kind of developed that unique experience, and what is it specifically, if you don't mind kind of sharing like a brief overview of that?
I feel like I've always tried to incorporate the storytelling element to it. And I'm constantly always learning. I mentioned that. And I'm reading a book where it talks about stepping into a luxury market. And so much of that is storytelling. Maybe not as much for products that are used for the mass market, where it's like quantity over quality. And for me, it's always been creating something that is it's not just about the product itself. No, it's the feeling that you get. It's the transformation that someone experiences. The one thing that I've always tried to tap into was storytelling. And this was when I first started this, I was not familiar with the power of storytelling. And living in Italy, like you mentioned earlier, the narrative of the Made in Italy story that encapsulates really the rich history, the craftsmanship, the design, all these things. I wanted to kind of translate that into my brand and business as well, but it was unintentional at the time. I was just so fascinated with how that narrative and that story is portrayed that it really captured my attention. So I was like, I really want to try to incorporate that into the brand. The brand is called LEISARÀ. And in English, and that was a whole like branding element too, like finding out the name, having it not just be like Hennessy handbags or something like that. You know what I mean? Which is something that people had encouraged me to do when I first started. And I was like, I don't want it to be about me. I want it to be more, again, without really fully understanding this whole process. And Lei Sarà means she will be in Italian. It's a fictitious name that I came up with, but it has that core element. So from a very early on development process of the brand, I was always thinking about the user and how the user could potentially connect more to the brand itself. And the products was just kind of like the cherry on top kind of thing, you know? But it's all very much work in process. We talk about this all the time. Building a brand is a long-term game. It's not something that's just built overnight or something you just launch to the world and it's like, okay. You're constantly learning. It's constantly evolving. Today, the brand is something completely different from what it was 6 years ago. So that's the one thing that I always try to remember is just like any story, there's a climax, there's important characters that evolve, and so it's similar. It's similar in that aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen the bags and they're beautiful as well. So we will have a link to what you want to check out with the website in our show notes so that you can go look at them, admire the brand, and see all your hard work come to life. But we're approaching the end of the interview here, and we love to ask this question on the show. What do you know now that you wish you knew earlier on in your career?
For me, earlier in my career, every rejection felt very personal. I felt like I'd always fall into like this spiral of self-doubt. And I was thinking, okay, they didn't hire me because I'm the problem. Like, is it me? Am I the problem? Like the audio on Instagram. But that's the one thing that I've over the years have tried, and I still struggle with this. Like, this is a constant reminder, is that there's so many different factors that determine whether or not something moves forward. And if you do fall into, whether it's a rejection letter from a job interview, or not getting picked up by a client, or not being able to sell your bags in a boutique that you were so desperately trying to get into, that it's not necessarily you. There's a lot of different factors going on. So giving yourself grace and understanding that it's part of your journey. And for me, especially taking an unconventional path, like I had to really understand that, hey, maybe on paper, I'm not everybody's cup of tea kind of thing. But when I do get an opportunity, I give it my all, and I put my clients first and whatnot. So it's not necessarily me. There's so many other factors out there. And so that's the one thing I feel like early on, it probably would have saved me a lot of tears and a lot of heartache, thinking, well, when is my shot gonna come, kind of thing. And just keep moving forward and staying positive, and learning from mistakes, and keep learning as much as possible, and just being prepared for what's next, because you never know what's on the way. So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we're excited to see what's coming up for you and just everything that you're building. But speaking of that, tell us where we can follow along with you personally, LEISARÀ. Like, what are all the links we should be linking out to?
Oh, okay, so I am not very active on social media, but I do like to spend some time on LinkedIn. So we can connect on LinkedIn. I love connecting to other people, growing a network and whatnot. I mentioned that earlier. So LinkedIn is a great spot. My brand, the handbag brand, is LEISARÀ, LEISARA.com. And then for design, it's LTELTIdesigns.com. I'm rebuilding my website right now. So if you listen to this episode currently, there's going to be a coming soon page up. But if you are listening to this podcast a few weeks from now, the site will be up, and I would love to connect. Thanks, guys. This has been fun.
Hey everyone, it's Erica. I just wanted to pop in here to let you know that we just released an incredible article on our website highlighting 38 marketing professionals currently open for hire. If you're a recruiter or a brand looking for new talent, or you just want to learn from your fellow peers in marketing who are in the job market right now, go ahead, go to the show notes, click the link to the article, and read on. We'll see you online.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. We hoped you loved it as much as we did. If you enjoyed the conversation, we'd love to get your feedback on the episode. Head to the review section of your favorite podcast app and let us know what you thought. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
We are so excited to share that our first ever free Marketing Happy Hour digital resource is now available. Download the Dream Career Game Plan today at marketinghappyhr.com/freebie. That's marketinghappyhr.com/freebie. This 5-step workbook will guide you through defining your goals, building your network, diversifying your skills, influencing where you're at, and investing in your growth. Cassie and I created this resource with marketing careers in mind, but the framework can be applied to any industry. Our hope is that this workbook will help you truly elevate your career, whether you're in the market for a new position or just looking to make your mark in your current organization. No matter where this resource finds you, we are cheering you on every step of the way. So go check it out at marketinghappyhr.com/freebie to download and make your career dreams come true.